Start streaming. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Top Deck Heroes after kind of a short break. We got our friends, our hosts, myself, Sean O'Brien, and Kevin
And
Broberg.
welcome to the show, everyone.
Good
Glad to
evening.
have you.
So we did a couple things a little different tonight. We've got in our upper right-hand corner of our screen the upcoming event schedule, so we don't have to waste all your time at the end of the show doing that. So that's kind of exciting. And we have some news at the top of the hour. Kevin Broberg, we
Yeah,
have.
so
Oh, go ahead.
earlier this week, we launched the Rochester CCG Public Market, a Facebook group for buying and selling cards in a sort of sanctioned and a bit more easily navigable way than the Jasco Games official forums. By sanctioned, I mean, we're telling you we can do it. We're telling you it's our thing. I don't know.
Well, it's sanctioned in that it says specifically on the forums not to sell your stuff.
Yeah,
So we actually got a little picture of it here up on the screen right now. We'll cover up Kevin's face. I'm sure no one's going to complain. There we go. He's sufficiently covered. So it's pretty much open to anybody who wants to join. You just gotta kind of know somebody who's already in it, and you post stuff that you're looking to trade for, and see if you can get it. Like we got Jeremy Ray here. He wants to trade partners in crime fighting for certain Battle for Power ultra rares. So you get on, you post what you're looking for, or you look at what people want, and everyone gets taken care of. Now, everyone remember it is
yep.
kind
We
of a.
we want to make it We want to make it a little bit less of the Wild West and a little bit more of a comfortable, friendly place to make these deals than just kind of contacting someone out of the blue. And yeah, actually, go ahead with what you're saying.
Well, I was just saying that it's not anything sanctioned. Do trade at your own risk, and we'll see if folks end up liking it. We'll get that
Yep.
down real
The
quick.
Well, yeah, when you said you have to know someone in it, I think the first rule of the UFS buy sell group is tell your friends.
So, other than that, Kevin Broberg, I'm going to kind of let you lead the show tonight, telling us about our main topic here.
Yeah, so I was hoping to talk a little bit about kind of keyword traits and some of the design in the new set, and kind of get your opinion about what kinds of design, like get kind of a former designer's perspective on some of these things, about how you would make these cards, how you like what your goals are for a character, and kind of what sort of some stuff that informs how the sausage gets made a little bit, I guess. So in the new set, one of the clearest elements is a heavy focus on kind of keyword traits to kind of inform you what a character does, what kind of like kind of give you a guideline for what kind of deck you should build with them. So like Alice, cares about weapon attacks. Balcor, charge and slam. Gabrick throws. Heidi, well, she cares about Kriegers, and then her Kriegers care about tech attacks. Lily, ranged attacks. Misa, allies. Sasha, Fury, Ulrich, Combo, Zoe, Ranged, Reese, Weapons and Punches, Satoshi, Weapons, Sebastian's, Combos, like almost the entire, like, I think actually, is it like five characters in the set don't explicitly call out a keyword on their character card ability? Um, and that's and then on top of that, there's also quite a few cards that have like four keywords, four keyword traits. Ulrich's attacks have charge and slam, and then their combo conditions, and sometimes something else on top of that. Uh, Several of the Krieger attacks have 4+ keywords, including up to 3 descriptors in some cases. They have tech, ranged, and weapon. Um,
Man,
and
I
this
wish Paid
this
to
was kind of
Protect was
jarring for a
still
lot of
legal.
people, I think. Oh, mama. You'd never kill Heidi.
No, ever, never.
She just Exodia all over you. And so I'm wondering if you had a perspective on sort of why the designers might have chosen to build their cards out like this.
Well, I remember, back when I was designing Rise of the Masters, there were a couple characters that kind of had a one of them in particular that comes to mind that had a real focus on things was something like Quickman. We had a new
Hmm.
keyword that set, was Flash, and we introduced a shitload of new keywords in this set as well. And I think the design team right now is a little more willing to try slightly riskier things compared to how we did things back in the old days, where Quickman was kind of booty because he didn't have any good flash attacks, not enough good flash attacks to make a deck that completely wants to pigeonhole into flash. And
I
it's
think it's probably fair to say that Quickman was conservative. I think.
mhm. And one of the things that's really difficult with designing characters in particular is it's really easy to make them overpowered because you want them to do a certain thing. And if you choose their thing to be centered around a keyword, it does give you guardrails so that well, like an example of character who was really good was Snake Man. For a while he was rip roaring and tearing apart tournaments left and right, and his guardrails was low. Low attacks get really good with him.
Hmm.
And it kind of limits for future design proof, what bad things could happen if you try to limit characters as to what they can do. So it's nice guardrails to have, I think.
Okay, yeah. So a character like Snake Man, I just looked up. There are 410 attacks in standard, and obviously that gets cut down by building a deck on a single resource symbol. But so if you think, so one way to think about it then is that there are 410 different pieces you could slot in your deck just looking at your attack lineup, and then players can pick the best attack lineup for a given character, uh, and there's a lot more risk for something unintended happening, or something clicking together just a little bit too well when they have that many possible game pieces. But if you narrow it down like Snake Man, who let's click on the low button here. Um, Snake Man has only 74 possible options for attacks. And that's, again, I'm not even filtering by resource symbols here. Um, it gets much narrower, and then you don't have to worry about quite as many combinations. Although sometimes you can even go out of the box with Snake Man, play some Shiranui no Mice or something. Um,
Right, and I think when
excuse
you
me.
have a character on who has those guardrails like that, people who still drive off the road are either crazy or they're innovating, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at another character, I think that everybody in the community except for Jasco Games thinks is a problem is Ryu, where there are no guardrails here. The
Yeah, for you
guardrails,
is completely open ended.
right? And the only thing he has for him it says is how do I get more cards in my hand, but not
Right.
too many cards. And
Well, yeah,
that's
he has two costs. He has a effectively discard a card cost, and then a discard a momentum cost.
right. And so the natural progression on that is to try to find what attacks put more cards in your hand it can generate fast momentum, which is the package you
Yep.
get with Etten Cells and Mistral, is getting more cards in my hand and fast momentum. And it's not I think that's the best package to run with Ryu, but it's not the only package. And then
Oh yeah,
outside of those
certainly.
cards, you have a ton of options. There are some people that think flying Yamato Spear is the best thing you can do. Some people, I've seen kicking around Ice Slasher as a possible finisher for him. Any decent multiple move with Ryu can be really good, especially if you can keep putting cards in your hand. And as long
Yep.
as he's legal in the format, not only do you have to say, going back to Snake Man, where you got to be like, well, while Snake Man's legal, we got to be careful what low attacks we make. With Ryu, you got to be careful what all attacks you make because he has no guardrails.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective. It makes a lot of sense. I think that some of these characters are informed by. Well, I think that there's really two ways you can kind of look at it. Even so, they don't want to make characters that are too good, and they want to make characters that have a certain like they want to hit the sweet spot on power level, right? And so narrowing down the space of possibilities lets you kind of do a better job within that space, to an extent. But I think there's another point that I think they may have been trying to shoot for, and then let me know if this like makes sense from like a design goals perspective. But I think that part of the reason all of these characters are kind of on rails like this, we say guardrails, but it doesn't have to be like keep you from like these could be like bumpers in bowling too. If you're a new player, you don't know what you're doing. Well, here you want to play Alice. Alice is fun. Play some weapon attacks, and now all of your attacks will have weapon, and it'll help guide you to not only build your first deck, but then kind of like it'll give you a signpost to say here's what to look for in the next card to add to your deck on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty true, but I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a conversation I had with a UFS player this week.
Okay.
He actually, and he'll remain nameless, thinks that Blood Omen is the worst set to come out in recent history.
Ouch.
Which is
it's a bold claim.
That's a bold claim, especially since we released the World of Indies and Rise of the Masters.
You didn't have to say that, Sean O'Brien. You didn't have to call out two other sets that you think are worse. Like it's not like a distinction that we need to make here, okay?
Right. So, you're right. But one of the things he said, and this is coming back to character design. Maybe we're not even on this tangent yet, but he had played a deck with Malin and thought it was a shitload of fun. This new player, and then he tried to build a Gabrick deck.
Wait, is this a new player who said it was the worst set, or is this someone who is helping the new player?
This is someone who's helping the new player said it was the worst set.
Yeah.
And so this new player, got together a Gabrick deck. And Gabrick, he's got his little guardrails, the path to where I think design wants you to go with him is pretty clear. He's like, this is bad. And he had the same experience with Gabrick and Lily and I want to say Balcor. I don't remember the conversation clearly right now. And I think there's this complaint that the characters are pigeonholed and not very exciting, which is kind of the swinging of the pendulum completely in the other direction from Warriors of the Night and Rise of the Masters, where the characters were insane, and then the rest of the cards in the set weren't as exciting.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting point regarding the pigeonholing of these characters that I wonder if it makes the appearance of being one-dimensional makes it worse. So I know one big thing in trying to build decks with this set, or trying to incorporate cards from this set into decks, is that Balcor's cards are totally useless in Gabrick, almost categorically.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabrick's cards are worthwhile in Balcor a little bit because some of his cards are really good, but for the most part, they're kind of irrelevant in that way too. Or like if I have an old deck, in some cases, I'll be able to like slot in some new ranged attacks with my Tengu dives or something. But because a lot of these characters are built around these keywords like this, they're kind of walled off from one another. And to contrast that, I think a little bit. With one of my favorite design decisions that Jasper Games has ever made, that any UFS designer has ever made, actually, probably my number one favorite design decision was the team's approach in King of Fighters.
Oh, that was a good time.
Those cards, sometimes there were things that were kind of like a walled garden, sort of, and I think that sometimes those were built around keywords. So, for example, Iori was all about desperation. Both Ioris actually were all about desperation, and the other characters on his team were also largely desperation. Like they were desperation focused. It was a desperate team, and so some of those cards didn't fit outside of the team very well. But within the team, you would play a combination of Iori's cards, Vice's cards, Mature's cards. Regardless of which character you were playing, you'd play all of them because they all worked really well together. And your attack lineup might sometimes go completely, you'd probably play Divine Tribulation, or you'd probably play, whatever very powerful cards were around from other sets building a competitive deck. But building, a new player deck, you'd have, nine attacks to choose from. One of them was character only, but it was an ultra rare, so you probably didn't see that many, and they got to kind of hit a stride of not kind of completely holding your hand, saying, well, here's this character, he has 3 attacks, you want to play all of these attacks, and so you got a level of customizability, but it still held your hand a little bit. And then on a competitive scale, now you had a bigger pool of cards to work with to find the best combinations, but it was still more open-ended.
Right. Yeah, that I'm inclined to agree. The KOF teams was a really great design decision, and it worked out because even if let's say you liked King of Fighters, and for some reason you have this weird obsession with Terry Bogard. I don't know anybody like that, but you weren't even completely stuck with just Terry's support
Right.
because one of the things that a common mistake among new UFS players is they'll get a character and they'll just build a deck of their stuff and then they can't figure out why they're having
Yeah.
difficulty winning.
Well, yeah. They'll say, "Well, I built the deck with all these cards, and I don't know where to go next. Like, I don't know what to pull into this deck." Because that's a very intimidating question. Like there's a lot you have to figure out before you can take that big step.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's an area to kind of improve that and keep that thing going on if there was and this was a problem even when Tim and I were designing, was a long range view at design. Not, worrying about this set, the next set, and maybe the set after that, where you can kind of have, I don't want to say like tribes in Magic, but there are certain themes that kind of, reoccur over time. We did that a little bit with Dr. Wily, where the first Dr. Wily had some ally cards in there, and you're like, well, what the hell? There's no ally theme here. And then the ally theme came along later.
Yeah, it was very light. I remember there's a Mecha Dragon Blast lets you reveal another ally for +1 whole damage.
That card's still bad, but
It's cute. It's funny. It's got keywords.
but
But yeah, it had a very light touch in the first set. He was clearly about blowing stuff up,
mm,
being a diabolical villain with like a light touch of allies, and then the second Dr. Wily was laid it on thick. He was allies through and through.
yeah, he kind of flip flopped, where the destruction effects weren't so common, and he was more focused on allies and getting his allies back and getting to play the same capsule zap 40 times in the game, so you can get the same foundation in your staging area to destroy for +2 damage and have good things happen. But I think it's really hard, especially considering the fact that we're going to be having 3 licenses this year. We're going to get Street Fighter, Cowboy Bebop, and Mortal Kombat, and I think that's going to make that really difficult because you're not going to be able to say, well, I'm going to make this Ryu and he likes to empty his hand to the top of his deck for damage. And it's a
Right.
lot harder to swing around and build on that, which we don't need to right now because he's broken. But it's a lot harder to swing back around when it's not the same character, when you're not starting with, well, Dr. Wily's a bad guy who builds robots and blows shit up.
Yeah. One one kind of interesting thought one interesting idea I've sort of seen reading Magic design articles and like things from Mark Rosewater and the other people who work on Magic is this idea of the as fan of a certain mechanic or certain whatever, and that's just the idea that when someone opens a booster pack, if someone who doesn't play your game a ton, like maybe they just don't spend a ton of money on product, but they have a deck and they open a new booster pack and they want to know what the set's about. uh well, how many of a certain thing will they see
Mm-hmm.
in that booster pack? So, for example, they had a dragon themed set, and dragons they're big, powerful, mystical creatures, so they're not usually commons, but they still wanted to make sure that the quote as fan, like the number you would open in a booster pack if you fanned it out, would be significant, if not actually a whole number yet, because they're still you can't have very many common. But then they made a lot of cards that cared about dragons. So if you open the dragon set, you'd see the word dragon on one of your cards in almost every booster pack. And I think kind of having disjointed characters can really, like, if you want to say, well, here we made the ranged attack set or the tech set, that would be one thing. But this most recent Blood Omen set doesn't do anything like that. If you want to say, well, I really care about ranged cards, you open your booster pack.
You better
And
hope you got something with Zoe and Lily in it.
yeah, and you can kind of, like, Zoe and Lily actually, I think, did a. I know actually from playing limited, like Zoe, Miska, and Lily really kind of have, and they don't, those aren't actually a triad. They share 2 symbols with one another, and Zoe and Lily, or Miska and Lily, don't actually chain. But Zoe crossed with either of the other 2. There's some really cool things that go on because they they come together about range cards a little bit. Well, Miska's Flash works kind of well with Zoe anyway, and I thought that was really cool. And if you have a Flash deck at home or a range deck at home, if each of these keywords had a 2 or 3 character overlap, that could be really amazing. And we've seen this in the past, not just in the King of Fighters teams within themselves, but across the teams. So I remember, kind of a bad example, but I just remember from drafting King of Fighters Set 1 that if you wanted to play the character King, one of the best cards for her was Joe's Tiger Kick, because it was a kick, and she cared about kicks. No one else on his team cared about kicks. No other combos said, combo kick, but it was great for him. And then in the next set, there was Hua and Raiden who both cared about it, because respectively, it was a kick, and because it was a 4 difficulty attack to get a throw.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't see it. I think that the set, the guardrails are really strongly erected. You don't see flexible cards like that can kind of, and maybe we'll see this come to fruition later on. Maybe they'll go back and find ways to put this to fruition. But I think that might actually be another way to look at what's missing in this set, or what kind of went off the rails to make people kind of dissatisfied with this.
Yeah, you were talking about that, and I started looking through the set again, and like Joe didn't care about kicks, so it wasn't a big deal that Joe had a kick, but it was good for other people in the set. I look at Alice, and clearly Alice thinks as weapons, and she's got a weapon, a reversal weapon, and a charge weapon, so only one of those things is useful at all in the next character, in Balcor. And his thing is all charge slam, charge fury. And so then you go look at the next character, and it's throws. Well, we haven't even encountered a throw yet. And we're into the third character. And he's got a throw, a stun throw, and a safe throw. And then you get Heidi, and it's looking for tech cards. No tech cards yet, and we're now a third of the way through the set. And we get a Fury, and a weapon which you can use in one card for Alice, one card for I don't remember who does the Fury things. Sasha,
that's right.
And then you got a weapon, and then you've got a punch tech weapon.
And so actually, before you even continue, so you're looking at UFS Ultra and looking at the full set spoiler. One of the big things that I sort of took away from this idea of the as fan of a certain mechanic is that that you have to adjust proportionally to what's in a booster pack, or if someone opens a booster box, how many of a certain thing will they have? If I say, well, wow, Sasha's my favorite character, I liked her in the old thing, or I really like this cool ghost design she's got going on. Well, I'm going to buy a booster box and see what kind of Sasha deck I can build. There are only 2 common or uncommon Fury attacks in the set that she can play. And so, and if you when you look at the ultra rares, there are interesting decisions to be made, but that assumes that you have 4 of every card to be available for your deck.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we sit here and say, well, even just you and I are heavily committed players, so our experience of this whole game is a lot of it through UFS Ultra or through building, decks that are, they have a goal, they have a purpose that we understand completely. And I think that a lot of people don't share that experience. They say, well, I'm just going to try what I've got on hand, and I don't know if this is going to work or not. I'm just going to do the best I can with what's here. And they don't necessarily, maybe they look at the spoiler, maybe they look at people's collections to find out what cards are, but they build with what they have on hand and what they open in booster packs. And I think that might be that's kind of what's missing here, or that's kind of the drawback of segmenting the characters like this. Those people's collections just don't have enough to be coherent until you own everything.
Right. I know one of the folks in Twitch was saying that when they were drafting, they noticed that at common and uncommon, relatively few cards even matched the character themes at all. And so I know when I drafted, I drafted Lily in the draft that I played in, and I was fortunate enough, that I could get some ranged moves out of Zoe's support.
Yep.
But I struggled to have enough cards that actually used Lily's gimmick in the draft.
Yeah. And so in draft, draft is kind of self-correcting in a way, and I think definitely my impression from drafting the set is that you need to pay attention to what's going on around you. Like you have to kind of pick up if someone's like just giving you. You kind of have to really more so than that. You have to do one thing and then stick to it and hope that everyone else at the table does it too.
Mm-hmm.
Stick to your guns, choose what you're doing, and then be willing to just give away good cards to your neighbors so that you can all kind of cooperate to have playable decks.
Right. Well, talking about limited in this set, one thing that I know for me made limited for this set a hot mess was the back end of the set where all the reprints hung out. Because I'm used to from UFS design up until now, you open a Heidi card and all of Heidi's cards are going to have air, fire, and life, air, fire, life all the way through. Mm-hmm. And so I was drafting Lily, and I came across a what's the attack?
Hair Trigger.
Hair Trigger, and I'm like, oh boy, Hair Trigger. I'll put that in my deck. And then I'm like, well, bollocks. I'm building my deck off of good so I can get Zoe's support. Well, I'll just pass this Hair Trigger now, or I'll pass this Showdown now. And because I think with the back half of the set not being coherent with any of the characters, I think that, I know for me, threw a huge wrench into my drafting plans.
Yeah, that's really rough. I do appreciate that they wanted to both kind of make some reprints in this set, and also, they did in historically UFS has periodically had characters or had cards from people's support that just have one off symbol for whatever reasons they had to do that. And in this set, in the main support anyway, they didn't do that. Everyone always chained the same 3 symbols all the way through. But yeah, it can really cause problems when they choose to deviate from that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, back to the main topic though. As far as the
keyword spaghetti,
I think they may have gone a little overboard. When I first saw the set, I was super excited about it because there were rare and ultra rare attacks that seemed really, really good, and I think people are still kind of in that honeymoon phase here. And I know the player I talked to is an incredibly experienced player, former champion, multiple champion rather. And he's just like,
you're leaking out some personally identifiable information here, Sean O'Brien. Was it me?
Oh, curses, Kevin Broberg. You caught me. But, anyway. This person has won more than one champ card, and he's just like, boring. The characters are boring. I don't want to play any of them. And there's just keywords everywhere. And one thing we haven't talked about, talking about this set here, and I'm off topic again, but it just came into my mind, is he felt like there were a lot of nuclear missiles put in this set. Just
interesting,
incredibly powerful answer cards just plopped in there. One that really comes to mind for me is like Stop is a nuclear missile.
Yeah.
Critical Split is a nuclear missile.
Yeah, definitely. I think that this set, I'm not 100% convinced that it's like pushing the power level and like it'll break the game forever, but it's certainly doing more of that than it is. It's more in that direction than it is like careful conservatism, I guess.
Mm.
What's the thought? I can think of a better way to put this. Kind of like, really, my thought was when you said it's got a bunch of nuclear missiles. My first thought was, well, it's got a bunch of ultra attacks that end the freaking game. If you set them up, if you get the things go off, and that's certainly the case. And I wonder, I almost feel like this is a like experienced player versus new player gap again, where kind of like a victory condition for a very experienced player might be, well, I'm gonna grind you out with Tiger Kicks, just incremental advantage, good stuff, and then like be able to kind of plan ahead 3 turns to where eventually I'll wear you out and kill you. Where in this set, it's all about kind of having a straight line from point A to point B, and then balancing it out by having cards that throw a wrench in that plan.
Mhm.
and end up looking like nuclear missiles. You have Guardian Slasher. It's impossible to OTK someone through a Guardian Slasher. Literally, you just can't keep attacking if the opponent plays Guardian Slasher. But it's got a one check and it's got all these other problems with it. It's really hard to kill through stop. But now, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not sure that's a problem. I'm not sure that's a problem, but it's certainly different than grinding people out with Shoryudan or Tiger Kick.
Right. That might not even be a problem. It's just different design direction.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with the cards that came out of the Kifi era, you were supposed to play 2 or 3, 4 difficulty moves, you know, maybe make your opponent lose 7 or 8 vitality, and you pass the turn and you block a little bit and they hit you a little bit. And then 4 or 5 turns later, the idea was that somebody dies.
I call that good, clean fun.
Right. But I think part of the reason why design went in a different direction is UFS players in general are fairly conservative defensive players. And so once the game gets to turn 14, your chances of, playing a couple 4 difficulty moves and, dealing 7 damage
Landing
really
a hit.
starts to go down. Because you
Yeah.
can't go all out, because if you don't get there, then your opponent kills you on the backswing. And now it's a pendulum, it's swinging in the other direction, and now you die on turn 1 against Ryu because he goes move, 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 deal 43.
No, I don't think we can take Ryu as kind of a, well, maybe we can a little bit, but I think that his power level is an outlier, and
It's an
no one
outlier.
in this set is doing that, right?
He's an
I
outlier, but it's acceptable. Because if it
mm,
wasn't acceptable, he'd have been banned. And
could be right there. Yeah.
not banning a card that I think overwhelmingly the community thinks is broken tells me either that Jasco Games is unwilling to do it, they feel that they're unable to do it, or they feel that it's acceptable.
Well,
And
you have like 1.25 votes for broken on this podcast, so I don't know about overwhelming support.
let's see. Uh, I don't know.
I'm gonna ask chat. Um, and they certainly wanted to print tools to combat Ryu in this set. Getting turn one killed. You can't turn one kill anyone through Guardian Slasher.
No, that is true.
Uh, and I think that the kind of the defining characteristic of Ryu really is that I think he cheats control checks, and cheating control checks really doesn't play well with with the kind of the design direction they're taking with this kind of set,
Hmm.
of having nuclear missiles. There's like on turn 2, and just playing 7 hand size characters in this format. I think is going to be a lot of, if your opponent draws the right hand and checks fives, you're not living.
Yeah, but Ryu, make sure you check fives. You know, I wouldn't even feel. I mean, I'd feel like you got really lucky, and I might be a little salty if I played 7 hand sides and you donked me on turn 1. But if you checked running fives, if you giggles me, at least it feels reasonable. Like, okay, you got lucky. Ryu makes his own luck.
I mean, this is the categorical statement. Like, I played against base yesterday or Tuesday night, Monday night, one of these nights, and it was just like, yeah, there's nothing I could have done in this game. I just lost. It didn't matter. And there are games like that all over the place. I think in this format, not like all over the place, like every match it's going to happen. But if you sign up with a 7 hand size character, that's just going to happen to you sometimes. People like, I ask people out there next to say, yeah, I have an awesome matchup against every 7 hand size character, and I think they're wrong about that. But I completely understand where they're coming from, because their deck just blows, like 20 life like it crumples like paper.
Hmm. But we're not here to talk about Ryu. We're here to talk about, and
Keywords, yeah.
we've been all over the damn place. We were here
No,
to talk about
it's
spaghetti.
natural. Yeah. So one thing I did appreciate in this set that I thought was cool was we saw our first ranged throw, and it's actually on the card. Let me actually look up the name of the card. I need to change my search filters here.
It's that Lily attack, right?
Yep. I want to say it might be Phantom Driver. Yeah, Phantom Driver. It's got no block, but it's got ranged throw, printed 4 damage, so it fits in with lots of people's favorite card, Robot Masters. And it's got a cool little effect, makes it easier to play, so it's a great way to cap off an attack string. I just think this card sort of does something that putting let me look at another. Let me pull up one of the ultra rare attacks. Actually, um, shit, put in difficulty. So like Dazzling Maelstrom has. Gotta scroll down. Sorry about this. Weapon, charge, fury, and then combo fury. So why does it need these? Why does it need all these keywords? What are these keywords accomplishing? Phantom Driver has 2 keywords, and they both accomplish. They're both very, they're very impactful to what the card ultimately is. Dazzling Maelstrom, it has Fury because it wants to fit in with the Fury stuff. It's got Charge, I guess, because it wants to fit in with Ulrich's stuff. It's got Weapon for who knows what reason exactly.
Because she's holding a weapon.
Yeah, and I wonder if we'll see a lot more like this, or if it's going to be kind of a relatively limited case, or if this feels heavy-handed. I guess is what bothers me about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only was it that there's keywords everywhere, but they made 3 new keywords this set, 4 new keywords this set. Charge came out in this set, Fury came out in this set, Tech came out in this set, Deadlock came out, and EX. So I'm sorry, there are 5 keywords this set.
Yeah, this is true.
Which, before that, we didn't have nearly that many. We had 19 before that. So we've increased the number of keywords in one set by 20%.
And it's usually these keywords come out pretty well elaborated. I think to completely steal your thunder and move us to a different topic, I know one keyword ability, or one keyword trait, actually 2 of them, were actually shared by the all symbol for a while, between kind of the big standard rotation, and then gradually over time they kind of fell out of as cards rotated. They remained as kind of central themes, and even now, Zoe, like, we're continuing the tradition, which are the weapon keywords and the punch keywords, and these keywords had very different flavors to them. Despite you'd build an all deck and you'd have 2 choices of which way. Well, 3 choices. You could go completely off the reservation with something else. You'd build a punch deck that would be built around Valiant Assault and maybe a lot of stun and kind of wearing your opponent out that way, or you could build a weapon deck centered around Astrid's support and then later Satoshi's support, and having lots and lots of weapon cards to power up Astrid's ability, and then huge damage bonuses out of Astrid's support. And then more recently we have like Swordman, who's continuing the huge damage pumps for weapons kind of idea.
Right. And, I almost wonder, and I know we discussed this earlier, I'm going to totally steal your idea, is what if the keywords kind of had like their own clan things going for them, like their own tribal things? You talked about how, punches for a while were typically mid-zone, and they had cute little combo things that let you draw cards or, make your next thing easier. And it just lets you play more of those things in a row. And, what if the keywords overall had some sort of gimmick like that, where like Fury makes it easier to play more Fury attacks, and that's just kind of its thing till the end of time, and they're typically mid-zone and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you get a hand full of Fury, you can rain Fury down on your opponent, and it naturally strings out. I think that I really like to see kind of a higher purpose in play, just to be able to tell a story with my cards, with my decks, and so that's something I would be thrilled about. Maybe not as thrilled as the team mechanic, but it would be right up there. And in a way, you're kind of building. Like, you're building a structure that you can put narratives on top of. You can say, we're building a punch deck, and it's going to be like our other punch decks. Like, all punch decks are going to be part of this big like team, King of Fighters style team of like punch decks are going to work together with punch cards from across sets. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely, yeah. I think that'd be amazing to see. I think that'd be like a really a huge accomplishment for UFS design. Um, Hopefully, someone's watching who can try to accomplish that. But
One thing a certain former Top Deck Hero host wants us to mention tonight is he wants us to talk about the difference between traits and abilities. And what I think we know the difference between traits and abilities. You know, when a keyword ability has a keyword that has text to tell you to do something.
right, yeah, like I mean, the baseline difference is that a trait just sits on the card. An ability actually does something. It materially impacts the game just by being there. Whether it's a lot of times it's just an ability that is shared between many cards, like powerful or stun, but other times it's like throw, where it just literally by playing the game, throw usually comes up. Um, and both of them actually can kind of play into this situation, this role I was talking about of having decks that are different but it's still alike because of their similarity here. I know over the course, like the last couple of years of Jasco games, we've had a lot of
Excuse
throw
me.
decks and different flavors of throw decks, but a lot of throw decks that were really, all of my attacks are going to be throws. I'm going to play some cards that are like Fleeing Half Nelson King, Fleeing Half Nelson Skullman. Always kind of defensive oriented first, but then they have this like long grindy, you can't stop it, win condition based on chip shotting you with throws until you just give up. Even if you block everything, you're still going to get knocked down. Um, and so, like, back in the Tekken days, a King deck was a lot like a restack in that you built it on your character's theme, played all the keywords together, and did it like that. Or like Dark Tide Summon K Dash, a deck built around the powerful keyword, and then it was almost as much of a signifier as it was the actual ability. But abilities then also, you get to build around the actual flavor of that ability as well.
Mm-hmm.
So a powerful deck or a deck that's all powerful attacks wants a lot of momentum generation because then you can time that correctly. Um,
See, what I'd rather see, we were talking about how traits and should have sort of themes within them. Like the keyword abilities, like multiple, reversal, combo, throw, I don't want to see those things as a character theme again. Because having characters that are throw, you know, we've had a lot of throw characters recently, and almost all of them have been Earth. So right now, in most cases, unless you want to play Earth, you're probably not going to play a throw deck. And I'd rather see, things like multiple, powerful, stun, kind of sprinkled around so that everybody gets to have it.
well, so I think that my immediate response is isn't like your favorite deck in your back pocket right now Iceman,
Yeah,
who's a multiple themed character, right?
right. I was thinking like going forward, we probably should stay away from things like that.
Well, I don't think it's inherently wrong or bad. And I don't think it's any worse to have a weapon themed character versus a stun themed character. Uh, I think ideally you kind of have you kind of want to have a balance between sort of like a linear deck where everything is the same, and then a deck. I'm not sure what word I should be looking for here to say like the opposite of that, where you just pick the best pieces from different strategies. You have a little bit of stun here on some like your hyper bombs or something, but then you have a little bit of like kicks and reversals over there, and then you just kind of mishmash the best universal fighter together from from the pieces you can find and tie them together in some other way than just the linear combination keywords.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that you want a balance, and we've had better balance I think in this than we have in a long time. There's fewer one-dimensional combo decks, and there's more like Snake Man is a six hand size linear low attacks deck, linear momentum deck, linear multiples deck. Um, and there's a bunch of other characters that are sort of in a similar space to him, but all in different ways. And then there's also a huge pile of just kind of generic synergy things like Dave Wagner Shield Rams or whatever.
Mm. Well, Kevin Broberg, I think we have to table this discussion because I think we could spew and spout all night about this.
Oh yeah, it's very open ended. I mean, we're talking about hypothetical ways to organize future UFS sets, which have hundreds of moving pieces, and each card has dozens of what's the word I'm looking for? Degrees of freedom from one another.
And we
So
have nothing to do with the process.
nothing at all.
So let's instead talk about things we do have a little bit of control over, and that's the upcoming events.
Yes.
So the we have the events up on the screen right now, actually through the beginning of April, and we got a pretty heavy UFS calendar right now, and it's
Oh yeah,
actually
it is.
a healthy split between JASCO events, sponsored officially through the company, and non-JASCO events that are being supported and funded through individual fans. So let's get right into this. So here coming up January 28th, 2017 is the first Midwest Circuit stop. That's this coming Saturday. And for the Midwest Circuit, they did something a little interesting where they are not going to have King of Fighters be legal.
Yeah.
That
So
whole block is right out.
backyard tournament series. I should say backyard. Player-driven tournament series. TL gets to set their own rule set, and they chose. We want to see what happens. What's gonna be like in a couple months, or maybe like a year, close to that. Anyway,
Who knows with the
without King
release
of Fighters,
schedule? Because we don't know when
and
Street Fighter's coming out.
I'm really interested to see kind of what their attendance will be like, what kind of decks we might be seeing. If anyone, if this affects the card availability or the market in any way, or what'll happen because this goes down, and it's awesome for all of them, obviously.
So after that first Midwest stop, and that's the first stop in a four-part series
Four
rather,
part, yeah,
is the Las Vegas PTC out in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, at We Play Games West, February 11th to 12th. That's going to be a fun event. It's going to be the first PTC with Blood Omen, isn't it?
yeah. Actually, the event this coming weekend is the first time we'll see Blood Omen in competitive play at all, and then Las Vegas will be the first time we see it in competitive play with King of Fighters block. So it's a fertile ground for brewing these days.
So that event's on the 28th. So there's Midwest, there's 2 week break, and then there's a Las Vegas PTC. Then
Yep.
then the following weekend is the second Midwest stop, February 18th at Saltire Games in Indianapolis, Indiana. And so back to that no King of Fighters block tournament scene. After that
Yep.
is usually a very highly anticipated PTC down in Atlanta. And I think that's where we're going to see what the best minds in UFS have come up with, because that's always an extremely competitive event. Not to say that Las Vegas and the Midwest Circuit stops won't be, but Atlanta typically has the highest concentration of former champions of any PTC of the year. I think we could agree on that.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll be watered down a little bit. I know they have a new game store, and I've been keeping up with those guys, and they've been demoing a bunch with new players. So maybe we'll have like 50-50 former champions out of Atlanta, because all the champs will show up, but they'll have plenty more people besides. That's going to be really thrilling though, and I love how the spirit of UFS is like taking hops across the country from Vegas to Indianapolis to Atlanta every weekend that month.
Yeah, and shortly after that, 2 weeks later, is the Omaha PTC, March 11th and 12th at the Underground Gaming Center in Omaha, Nebraska. And I forgot to put it on the schedule, but there's another Midwest Circuit stop a week after that, and that's
Yep.
going to be in Ferndale, I believe. I don't know where Ferndale is, but I'm sure it's somewhere in one of those corn states like Indiana or Michigan, Ohio, something like that. And then, and that's going to be March 25th. 2 weeks later is the St. Louis 1K, which is also the fourth Midwest Circuit stop. Now, that is going to be the only Midwest Circuit stop, provided they still want to do it as a Midwest Circuit stop with King of Fighters block legal. And that event is going to have $1,000 cash given out to top placing players. And I heard,
It's the Rochester CCG 1K, big guy, right?
That's right. And I heard a little rumor that some celebrities from Las Vegas may be coming out to play because it's
Hmm.
not a JASCO sanctioned event, so JASCO Games employees are eligible to compete.
Actually, speaking of Jazz Games employees, I understand that Shane Duckworth is traveling out to Atlanta, not to play in the PTC, but to play in the side event on Sunday. They're running a inaugural. Speaking of fresh formats, we're not satisfied just with playing standard, playing formats they told us we can play. They're trying out the Jasco Eternal no band list format on Sunday, and Shane's going to come down there and try to beat some booties.
Well, Shane Duckworth, I think he is a pretty decent UFS player. I think if there's anybody who eats, breathes, and sleeps UFS more than Kevin Broberg, it's Shane Duckworth and
Shane
Jason
Duckworth's not close. I
Horonsky.
have a day job.
Which you think about UFS constantly. I get plenty of texts saying, "Ooh, I just thought of this deck," and I'm like, Kevin, I'm working.
Not so much lately, anyway. Yeah, I've been off it a little bit, but getting back on it right now.
Getting back onto the 1K, that's April 8th and 9th, 2017, at the Dizzy Dugout in Collinsville, Illinois. We're going to be putting pre-registration up for that pretty soon because we do have an attendance cap at Dizzy Dugout of 40 people. Now, I have spoken with Corey. He's helping me organizing this event, and he has told me that if there's a high likelihood that we will exceed that cap of 40 people, there is an alternative venue that we can go to. And unlike alternative facts, it's true, where we can go and have a larger UFS tournament, which I would love nothing more, as much as I love my friends at Dizzy Dugout, to have such a great turnout for this that we have to find more space. That would be
Good,
awesome.
good problems.
And I heard, well, I didn't hear anything, but it would be a fun rumor to start to say that Street Fighter was going to be legal there. But it would be a completely baseless rumor because I don't think we have a release date.
I think that Mortal Kombat and Cowboy Bebop are going to be legal for the 1K, and if you don't believe it, um, I've got an executive order for you to read.
Is that an alternative fact that those cards are going to be out and legal?
It's no, it's a completely legit real fact handed down by the. No, we're not. I'm not going any further down this. We're done. We're done.
We're done.
Got there.
Shay Duckworth tells me not to start a rumor about Street Fighter being legal. We don't want to start any rumors that may or may not come to fruition. We will play with whatever is standard legal at the time. Hopefully,
And
Street Fighter.
definitely don't think about that pink elephant anymore. Just do not take that picture right out of your head. Do not think about the pink elephant.
So I think
Only hurt you.
that about wraps us up for tonight. Thanks everybody for tuning in as always. Next week we're going to talk about the results of the Midwest Circuit Stop.
Yes.
See what kind of surprises us, what's unexpected with the King of Fighters block not being legal. Kevin Berger, do you have any quick thoughts on what do you think is going to do well?
I have a policy of not thinking about things that I don't need to care about. So, like during spoiler season, I don't like build decks with spoilers, and I'm currently not planning to go to one of these Midwest Circuit events. So I'm going to be excited, surprised, excised, like all kinds of things by the results next weekend.
Well, one thing, I think speaking of spoilers, if there's anybody out there in the chat who has any control over when we'll start seeing some Street Fighter spoilers, I think we should get those coming out, pretty soon. That'd be great. As far as what I think is going to do well this weekend, I think that we're going to see a completely different meta than we will see in Las Vegas. I think there's a lot of very impactful King of Fighters cards that people won't have access to this weekend, and for sure, I don't think Ryu is going to be as good. He doesn't have Etencels and Mid-Stroll to get fast momentum and draw cards.
See, I think I would not be surprised to see Ryu in the tops of this event, but I also I wouldn't be surprised to see many things. But I would expect it to be a good symbol Ryu with Rain Flush. Remember when Rain Flush was like the best card in the game?
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
So I think we might see that card come back. I think we might see a lot of cards that we haven't seen in a little while, and I expect to be less surprised than it seems like you would expect to be from rotating 3 sets out. I think there's a lot of cards that are just really, really good, and that at times I have felt sick of, that are still just going to be sticking around forever. It's not getting better soon.
Matt Hughes, if you think Rain Flush is so good, you should show up this Friday and beat our booties up with it. If you think it's still the best card in the format. Which it's not.
Yeah, man.
Flying Yamato Spear is the best card in the format.
I don't know, Sean. I don't know if I'd trade 1 damage for 1 momentum. And a progressive difficulty. The progressive difficulty really hurts, to be honest. All right. Anyway. All right.
Guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Good night.
Night, everybody.